Namaste and welcome everyone to the Wednesday 10 p.m. show, which is co-hosted by me and Shri Vibhuti Jha. And today we are going to talk about global economy and also Indian economy in relation to the global economy. And we have two economists well known to the Jaipur Dialogues audience, Vijay Sardana ji, and we have also got Anurag Singh ji from Chicago. So, two of us from India and two of them from the United States. So, I'll start with Vijayji. Vijayji, what was that sweet little visit to Saudi Arabia by Joe, old Joe? And he didn't really look very happy at the end of it.
Sanjay, first of all, good evening to all of you. Can you see my, can you hear and view my broadcast?
We can hear you, but your picture is
can
frozen.
hear you, but your picture is frozen for the moment. Not to worry.
So you can please continue.
See, first of all, good evening to all of you. Good morning, wherever you are located on this planet. After this Ukraine crisis, if you look at, there is a need to create lobbies which can support or come in line with the particular ideology. And everybody knows that right now the crisis of fuel or the fuel led inflation around the world is biggest concern for Western world, whether it is Europe, whether it's America or their allies. And two important sources of commodities, Ukraine and Russia, are at war. It means almost like you can say 30-40% of wheat is at stake, and almost a major supplier of all forms of energy, whether it is crude, gas or coal, which is coming from Russia to Europe, is now no more, I will say that, in a comfortable zone, because now prices are not under the dictate of Western world. So they have to look for someone who can help them in reducing these boiling prices, especially of energy. And that's why, as we all know, that Saudi Arabia is one of the major players. Other major players are also not in good terms with America, like Venezuela and Iran. So ultimately, they are left with only one big player, that is Saudi Arabia. And I think that was the visit, because after Khashoggi's, murder in Turkey, things were not very comfortable. So it was high time that there should be some cooling off effect between the US and the Saudi relations. So that was the pretext under which Joe Biden took time out from busy schedule and visited Saudi Arabia. So this is where one can start looking at, will it help or not? I think that's a secondary thing which we can discuss later.
Okay, Anuragji, did it help?
Yeah, so first of all, namaskar to all the listeners. Yeah, I think even on the channels which are very favorable to the president here, to the Democratic Party, the view is that it did not help. So look, there is a $100 million barrels per day of oil that is needed in the globe. About 35% of that is consumed by US. US of late has lost about 15 to 20% of its refining capacity. The idea was that and this capacity cannot be substituted. I mean, the companies can't increase production in a short term, at least for 1 or 2 years. So the idea from Biden's side was that Saudi Arabia can pump more oil so that US can kind of cool down the inflation a bit a little. So obviously that did not help. I don't really understand, Sanjay ji, even the politics of it, or the whole imagery of the whole visit, because it was very clear that why would Saudi Arabia oblige and reduce the prices of raw material, which is basically their source of income, right? It is like me asking you to pay for 10-15% of your income to me. That's not going to happen.
Right. Vibhuti ji?
Yeah, I mean, Saudi Arabia visit of President Biden was a flop. It didn't achieve any goal. Actually, MBS told him in no uncertain terms that we no longer have any additional capacity to produce more. Having said that, what is also important is that it was a very weird visit. It's like Joe Biden had queered the pitch for any conversation with Putin or MBS or others because he calls ugly names. He uses bad words as a president. It's even worse because he's the president of the United States. To call MBS a killer, decrying the country for what it is, and then you go to him to talk. It's like it's worse than Rahul Gandhi and Sonia Gandhi calling Modi names, and Modi will tell them, "Come back again, milte rahiye." So it's a very pathetic situation that when you queer the pitch, then your conversation, you can't forget that. MBS cannot forget. You saw the body language. It was a stern look in his face. Oh, you are the guy who is coming to me to ask for oil. Why don't you produce yourself? Why are you asking me, calling me a killer, and then coming to me for oil? It's not done. But it's more important than that. What I'm seeing here is that the socialist measures of President Biden has forced the former chairman of Morgan Stanley, Stephen Roach, to say that the US living standards are about to be squeezed as never before. This is important. I mean, people are shouting about high price rise in India. I mean, we are not shouting here, but we are paying double the price of gas, milk, eggs. Everything has doubled up here. But because we are able to absorb it somehow or the other, because remember, the food bill of a typical American household earner is about 8 to 9%. In India, it is more than 40 to 50%, the food bill itself of the earning capacity. So we are still able to absorb the food costs, but it is staring glaringly in our face right now. So, it led to another person making a very profound statement. Ray Dalio, the world's largest hedge fund manager, made a statement that no empire lasts forever. And the other one was a dangerous one by Steven Druckenmiller, who said that this is the biggest redistribution of wealth from the middle class and the poor to the rich forever. This is Druckenmiller, who was working with George Soros and was part of the team that bet on British pound. So you are looking at a scenario where people who are, as Anurag ji very rightly pointed out, even the media and the people who are supportive of Biden, they are critical of the whole situation right now. And that's why you had Taiwan, you have all these kind of things going on, was to distract the attention from the upcoming 2022 election in a few months from now.
Okay, so that's like a true Republican. Just to inform our other guests, Shri Vibhuti Jha is contesting on a Republican ticket for the New York State Assembly this
That's right.
November.
That's
So
right.
what you got was, I think it can be called a tainted Republican perspective, if I might add.
But painted, but truthful.
Yeah.
So, coming back to Vijay ji, now we have this global perspective right now, and according to me, the global economy is in doldrums. What do you think?
Obviously, see, if you look into the price trend across the commodities, especially the energy, which is the foundation of any economic activity, all energy prices are somewhere 80 to 120, and in some cases maybe 200% up. Obviously, if the fundamental or the baseline is up, it is bound to impact every possible activity in economic activity in any country, in any economy. And then you had a very classic case of Ukraine-Russia war, which is one side. In last 20 years, we were promoting globalization via WTO, that why you are producing everything, depend in the world market, we will feed you better because it will be cheaper, better quality, etc. And then you landed up with the embargoes, whether it is sanctions and whatever you call it. Then you leave everybody into high and dry on the supply side. And then unfortunately, we had a natural disaster created by man-made over anxiety, that is COVID. So this is we have to also factor in, and now supplemented by Taiwan. So one after another, I think we are actually trying to tell the people that get out of globalization, start focusing Atmanirbharta, or self-reliance, because the world is becoming more and more unsure of what they can offer. And this is where I think going to put a lot of pressure on the global supply chains, and that will further make life more complex, whether it is economically, even strategically. So what my way of looking at is that all the mess which is happening here, somewhere, I think one common factor is America. So where it is, crisis of fuel, whether it is crisis of Ukraine, whether it is Taiwan, or even if you look into all these monsters directly or indirectly, who created China? It's American companies. Who is funding the war of China against America is actually American companies. So this is where what is happening around the world. And we, if dependent on so-called globalization philosophy, which actually European wants, it is not as great help to America, but more of European phenomena, because European markets are fully saturated. They don't have population. Their production facilities are in place. Population is declining. Being a developed country, the consumption is almost saturated. And the more interventions of technology, robotics, IT, etc., if it is going to improve the productivity and production, where they will sell. So they have to look at globalization or the world market. And if they don't sell it, they have to offer subsidy, which will make their economy further worse. So this is where one has to understand that we are classically in a very phased, you can say, decentralization from a globalization to localization, or at the best FTAs, and FTAs in regional blocks. And this is where the China is also eyeing that new game. So I said in 2020 in the beginning that we are entering into new global, world order. India will be beneficiary if we play our cards right, but the one of the biggest sufferer is Europe, and Europe is dependent on America for foreign policy and diplomacy and everything. And then you have two big monsters, Russia and China, to counter them. Let's see how this chess is going to play.
Okay, Anuragi, your take?
Yeah. So, Sanjay ji, let's understand there are about 4 or 5 mega trends which are now playing in the global economy, right? One is this geopolitics, right? We all know Ukraine war happened, but I think what it did is it kind of crystallized the whole world into a kind of a now a bipolar world. So Cold War is back, we like it or not, in some form it is back. United Nations has been a failure. The 5 countries with veto powers, now 3 of them are one side, and China and Russia clearly are on the other side. Most of the developed market wanted to take countries like us, they wanted us to take sides. We did not take, and I think that was the right move. But clearly Cold War is back. World is divided. It will create more conflicts, and we should be ready for it. And obviously, we can discuss the visit to Taiwan, but I think that also is a further indication that the world is very divided now. So expect anything. Second is world was already coming out of a post-COVID life where COVID really caused a lot of easy money policy. What central banks did was, especially in the developed market and also in the emerging market, they reduced the cost of money, which is the interest rate. In developed market, the rates were mostly zero or slightly negative, right? So that was one backdrop. What it did is that it increased the asset prices, because if the money is cheaper, people buy more houses, more stock markets, Bitcoin, you call it, right? All the speculation goes around. So I think the economy was trying to come out of that, because you have to eventually inflate those bubbles. So second is that mega trend. It is still underway, and that's why you see the banks are raising the rates. And as they are raising the rates, the asset prices across the globe are cooling down. So that's also another trend. Markets also might face correction, which is happening across. Indian market somehow is resilient. We can discuss why, but broadly markets in US and across the world are now cooling down, which also is leading to asset collapse, which means that wealth creation will not happen because money is now relatively expensive. Um, Third is the inflation. So what the easy money did is that across the world, when there is more money available and much easily, and lending is very quick, it really results in everybody's capacity getting increased to buy things. And what it eventually does is that it increases the inflation in the market, because there are only as many goods, and if more money chases more goods, it causes inflation. So I think globally, I would say the markets, society in general, the economies, eventually they're all fighting these three mega trends. One is the geopolitical risks, which will constantly continue to be a backdrop for a couple of years, which will keep the commodity prices at risk in some sense or the other. Second is the easy money policy is ending, and the inflation is pervasive. Banks will try and fight it. If banks try and fight it, it is generally not good for the economy, because what it does is that if the interest rates rise, companies invest less money, they shunt more people to maintain profitability, which causes more unemployment. So ultimately, it might lead to a recession also, which might be global as well, right? And obviously, while India is doing very well, if India were to grow at 9%, India can't grow at 9% because the global economy is slowing down. So we might possibly grow at 6.5, 7%. So broadly, these are the 3-4 mega trends which are in play. And Sanjay ji, I think for the next 2 years, I think we will have to live with that.
If I may, I mean, my inquiry will be with both of you here. Is that you, as you said, that India can't be isolated. We are talking about the free trade arrangements, but at the same time, we are living in a remarkably interconnected world right now on a no-choice basis. Technology has broken the barrier. Everybody's is so so interdependent and so ever reliant on the other. Look at India itself; it's so reliant on energy supplies from everywhere, its energy needs. But like global projections were there, India is supposed to knock 2022 May 7.4% higher than most of the countries. Where is that growth projections coming from? Citibank chief, Bloomberg, everybody has said that India will survive recession. And in the US, we are suffering both inflation and recession, both at the same time. And if US is going to be dominating this conversation, how do you see the climate change impact the budgeting that has happened by the Biden administration affect all of us? Because that sets into motion. The money was not there, now the money is there. How will US force its geopolitical power on everybody else?
Okay. Let me take the first shot on this. So I'm sure there are certain trick questions in between, because Vibhuti ji knows some of the answers therein, but I'll still take a shot at this. So one is the interdependent, interconnected world, right? Which there's this interesting quote by, and I might be forgetting one part of it, where people are talking about Germany, that Germany tried to outsource its energy to Russia, its army to NATO, and foreign policy to somebody else. And then actually, eventually, they realized that nothing worked. And now they're paying the price of it, right? So I think the world is interdependent. And of course, look, India is net importer of oil, so we don't have a choice. Energy is something that we have to import. And that's why I think I always say that broadly a difference between a Saudi Arabia and a Pakistan is that they have oil and they were not born with oil. Pakistan was not born with oil. But I think, be that as it may, I think India is stronger because of its domestic economy. Look, 70% of all the economies are consumption-based. US economy, 70% is consumption-based. So is India. As long as the population of the country largely is consuming, it allows a country to be self-dependent and less reliant on exports. I think what we see the problem happening with some of these countries like Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, is that they were too reliant either on foreign debt or on exports or on tourism. And I think if you're over-dependent and major proportion of your income, especially foreign income in dollars, comes from one of these 2-3 things, then you are more dependent on the global economy. In India, that's not the case. Our foreign debt is very limited. It's about less than 15%, 10% of our overall debt. We are reliant on exports, but our exports are services driven, which are actually doing well in this environment. And domestic economy, although I think there are pockets of improvement, we can improve a lot. There is a lot of room. But I think we have a rock solid base which allows us to grow at 7%. China is growing at 3.5%, but we should not forget that China grew at more than 7-8% for 3 decades. So I think they can take a bit of a rest. We can't, and I think we got to grow at 7%. So broadly, that's the answer to the first one. Biden's, be it Biden or I think in a increasingly bipolar world, I think the US's ability to influence global policy is getting restricted compared to the earlier scenario, right? That's a well acknowledged fact, and for some reasons also US wanted to pull out from the affairs of the global economy. The only problem here is that the dollar appreciates a lot. So I think in any recessionary environment, there is a flight to safety. So from all the emerging markets, and we see this happening even in the Indian markets, that foreign capital leaves and comes back home. When there is a crisis in the world, you come back home. So everything is converging to US dollars. US dollar is appreciating, which makes our exports little expensive. That's the only problem I would say, which is for the countries like India or even other countries. And that's why you see some of the countries are also failing because they just can't pay up the export bill, which creates a balance of payment crisis. That's my kind of limited take on this.
No, it was a very good take, and there were no trick questions. The question is, because we all want to test what we are talking about, how valid and how close to the reality we are. That's what is important.
Yeah.
So the next thing that I wanted to also ask, that there is only one person in the world who practices free market economy, and that is Arvind Kejriwal. He gives everything free to everybody.
and that whole freebie discussion has come.
So
has come about because of him. And not a day too soon. I think we must credit Kejriwal. If he had not crossed all red lines, probably this the Supreme Court would not have issued notice on that petition.
So America, again, you will say that I have spoken like a true Republican. I would be saying the thing whether I was a Republican or not. So the freebies are the ones which hurt the most any economy. The capacity to pay eventually matters. But Sanjay, मैं आपसे पूछना चाहता था कि ये जो climate का जो budget पूरा लगाया है Biden ने, what will be the, there is a very lot of confusion about this. The school of thought that believes that climate change investment is required to save the world. But there is other school of thought, and there are some very good people on the other side, that our priorities are wrong. Because it's going to, if Stephen Druckenmiller is saying that this is the biggest transfer of wealth happening, we have to take it with a pinch of salt or seriousness both. Because, it has impact on, communities who will sacrifice more. Mr. Biden has already told America to be ready to sacrifice to protect democracy in Ukraine. So we are already paying the price of sacrifice. How long are the normal people, the ordinary human being who suffers so much on all these elements, always called upon to sacrifice, tolerate this?
May I to come in?
Yes, please.
Yeah, sure. See, Biden sir, or even the Western world, I'm a little cynical of, you can say, on their, agenda items very often. Because see, every time it is like a flavor of the month. I know there are many moral issues, there are many technical issues. One has to look at it. I'm not denying that climate change is not important for the world. It is very much important. But the fact of the matter is that when it suits, there is a climate change, there is a new set of rules for the world trade, there are new set of certifications, there are new guidelines, new enforcements, because it suits them. But when situation like Ukraine comes, they don't mind starting again their thermal power plants. They are again going back to nuclear energy. Then everything, the so-called dirty, becomes good. So what we have to look at is, see, end of the day, we have to appreciate two important things. I always say that the world is actually moves around the economy and politics is as a facilitator. And then you use diplomacy as tools to open those gates. So what we have to look in the whole process is, when Europe knows it very well that because of their cost of production is high and they cannot compete in the world market, you have to create many non-tariff barriers for the world so that the cost difference, the cost of manufacturing between China, India, Europe, and America actually becomes, at par. That is the whole desire. So sometimes you will find issue of deforestation. Sometimes you will find issue of child labor. Sometimes you will find issue of human rights. Sometimes you will find something else. And from last decade, it is going on as climate change. Fact of the matter here comes up is again and again, if you are so much concerned about climate change, then what the commitments you make, and you know it very well, that developing economy or countries like India may not have the best of the technology to mitigate the climate change impact. It takes time to do a research and come out, and it is a resource intensive activity because you have to go for research and come out with better options. If they have better technologies and if they are really worried about climate change, why they are not helping other countries in reducing the carbon and water footprint? Why they are not doing it? They simply give sermons, they do seminars, but they don't help technically. And when you go for technological options, then they say it is premium, it is patented, you cannot use. So there is a serious, I will say that it is like a flavor of the month. And that is where the issue comes up is that one has to question this, seriousness for the cause. But they have to use the terminology which I mentioned, including global, warming and climate change, etc., just to take a higher moral ground. And when it comes to their own problems, like Ukraine crisis, Russia is stopping the supplies. They don't mind starting their own coal-based thermal power plants because it suits them now. Now there is no more global agenda for climate change. And if they really wanted globalization, even WTO to survive, then why they created sanctions against Russia? So that is what one has to look at, is that what they are preaching and what they are doing, I think there is no connect. Ultimately, it is self-centered approach. If climate change suits me, I will talk about it. If global warming suits me, I will talk about it. If globalization suits me, I will talk about it. If these things are not in favor of me or my political ideology or political agenda, then I may say this can take back seat. Right now, maybe it's human rights. Maybe it is sovereignty. Maybe it is something else. So you come out with another rule book and you say, okay, now this rule book is valid for next 3 years. Let us address this first and then we'll go back to another rule book. The tendency of Western world to decide the agenda for the world is happening from last 50 years. Unfortunately, what you are seeing now, that theater which was earlier staged by Western world, is that theater of action is now shifting towards Asia. And that is making Western world extremely uncomfortable. And that's why if you see that today, if President of America has to walk into Saudi Arabia and pleading for the fuel supplies, and nobody is listening. In Taiwan, nobody is listening. In Ukraine, nobody is listening to them. And whole focus is on Asia. Because action and economic growth is in Asia, as I mentioned again. Europe is fully saturated. There is no more opportunity to invest because you can't make more money. Markets are highly saturated. America, saturated market. Africa, limited purchasing power. Latin America, geographically, is far away from the world. Where is the growth? Growth is in Asia. And where is the profitability? It is in Asia. And two important powers, China and India, which are in the center of action. One side you have East Asia, on the other side you have Middle East, and down you have Africa, is strategically located. On the other side, you have a China, but because China is highly ambitious and you don't want to tolerate anything by China because that is going to change the leadership of US and the Western world. So you want to contain that. So it is actually a test case now how the Western powers are going to maneuver in the changing world order. And let me tell you, it is not going to be easy because all the rule books, all the definitions, all the formula so far were created by the Western institutions and leaderships to prove that Western world is superior to rest of the world. But now that equation is changing, and that is making things uncomfortable. So climate change is also part of that. Fuel supplies are part of that. Even if you see that India will not be part of recession for simple reason, because India has huge 140 crore population in house, which is underfed, underutilized, unsaturated. So there is enough scope to absorb as much money as you dump here. And then this market has democracy, so you can't even question, like China. This economy is improving its fundamentals, that is infrastructure and regulatory environments, ease of doing business. You cannot question, you cannot complain. In IT, it is all over connected, so you can't complain even that. So what you have to complain? You have to complain some fringe elements that you can't do this and that, but growing within India, if I say that growing self-reliance agenda, whether it is technology, industry, employment, and other issues, I think there is no option. But the Western companies, those who want to make money, they have to come to India or they have to go to China. Now they have to choose between the two.
That's quite heartening coming from the two experts here. Vibhuti Ji, how about shifting to India now?
Why not? I already brought Arvind Kejriwal and his free market economy. So the point, India ka to jahan tak sawal hai, but there is a very important point, our friend has pointed out here, the institutional framework and his cynicism or skepticism regarding the Western institutions flavor of the month. That is something that we must talk about it, because India can't be isolated from that entire thing. And that's what is important. Unless and until we begin to write our own agenda, unless and until India begins to write its own agenda, people take you for granted, so long as we are following somebody's agenda. So a question, this is an inquiry that came to my mind on the subject matter of climate change, population growth, and resource utilization. This happened actually 5 years ago when Linda Grattan, London Business School professor of management, and I were sharing a platform with the Economist conference. And they were discussing the global growth in population from 6 billion to 8 billion and then to 12 billion. So the question came about, what is the optimum size of population for the world, for the entire world? Because after all, we all consume Earth's resources. And then they were talking about the replacement theory of population to contain. How valid is that theory is my fundamental question, because by a quirk of nature, some freak thing happens and world's population shrinks by 2 billion, I think the world's climate problem will be solved. Because eventually we are creating pressure. Our consumption is creating pressure on Earth's resources. And that's what is actually the root cause. I lived in two air-conditioned cities in India, Pune and Bangalore. Today, temperature hits 40 degrees. I use fan for 3 or 4 times in a year when I lived there. Today, you can't live without air conditioning. But what is the reason for that? Is it the excess urbanization, concentration of industries, lopsided development and models like Bangalore got 7 PSUs came to Bangalore, that created the entire pressure on the Bangalore city. Today's traffic is horrible, but the population growth today is Silicon Valley ban gaya. So what is advantage one time is a disadvantage at another time. We need to focus on that. This replacement of population theory and population control, which is actually the reason for Earth's climate change, because we have to do things to bring comfort to people, consume more. How valid is that theory?
See, the point here comes up is all these problems started when you had a wrong parameters for measurement of success.
That's right. That's right.
The problem comes up is that if you consume more energy means you are more developed.
That's right.
Look at Human Development Index. What is per capita electricity consumption? That will give you extra mark. More you consume power, more you are developed. More you burn calories in the name of fuel, you are more developed. More cars a society has, more developed you are. What was happening, and that is what I'm trying to say, that we adopted a wrong, distorted parameter of success in this world. Because that was the only way tangible things which you started measuring, whether it is fuel, whether it is power, whether it is area of the house, all those things which actually led to overconsumption, overexploitation, and today we are talking in the form of a global warming. First thing, if world has to do is change your success parameter from so-called tangible polluting parameters maybe to more sensible parameters. It means, will you change the Human Development Index report? That is first thing. Because your parameters are disturbed. Your parameters are wrong. Classic example, let me tell you. The top 10 parameters of the world, the top 10 countries which are on Human Development Index are basically Scandinavian countries. The fact is, maximum mental health care budget in the world is in Scandinavia. If you are so developed, then you should be happy. Why your society is having maximum mental health care budget? It means your parameters may be giving you physical comfort, but mentally you are not happy. Either you are in depression, you have a suicidal tendency, or you have some other social and other problems in the society. So is this development, even if you are in the number 10, number 1, number 5 of global human development index agenda, but you are not mentally happy? Is this human development? So what we are trying to say in this process is, I think the West has to learn now when it comes to, what is human development. It is not always physical, materialistic, even spiritual, maybe mental peace, maybe meditation should be one of the criteria when it comes to Human Development Index. But you will not find anything which is actually bringing peace to human society, maybe which will bring more cordial interface between human and nature as part of the development index. We will not. And that is the problem, that when we create a wrong parameters to measure a success, then you may call it I'm closer to the parameter of success, but fact is, in the process you have destroyed the world. And this is where, when it comes to the current political scenario, I can always go to Taiwan and say, yes, this is my success parameter, that I have visited a territory which you were saying it is bad. But outcome, you have created one more turbulence in the global peace. So point here comes up is that unless we relook into the so-called success and development parameters of the world, and UN is actually becoming nothing but a club. You just go have fun in those nice sightseeing locations and come back without any tangible outcomes, except signing some on dotted lines. That's all. So point here comes up is, I think high time when we have to relook into whether the parameters which are imposed on us, are they, when it comes to climate change, are they helping climate change, or they are destabilizing climate change? If they are destabilizing climate sustainability, then I think those parameters need change.
Sanjay ji?
Yeah.
I mean, I would want the population concept, Anurag ji, you also to comment on that, please.
Sure.
That's also a burning topic in India as well, because every challenge in India is a 1.3 billion people problem. Anything you implement, it is a big problem of people.
Correct. So let's take I think 2-3 points. So first of all, I like it the way Sardana ji, sorry, Vijay and Sardana, I was thinking what to say. So Sardana ji has put it the way that the developed market or the developed world cannot decide the agenda for emerging markets. I think that's largely true. However, alongside, I think there is a bit of a conflict that countries like us sometimes face. When I say countries like us, I'm saying India, which is that we want to be politically free, but we want to be economically dependent, right? And when I say economically dependent, we want all the technology, we want the capital flight, we want the dollars to come in, we want the capital markets to grow, because that creates prosperity. So there is a bit of a balance, and that these countries, the lever that these countries have, the developed market has, is that they say, look, all the technology and the capital is going to come from our side. And if that is going to come, there is a cost to pay, because then you need to make your institutions according to, the way we desire them to be, right? And there might be I understand environment is a non-tariff kind of a barrier, but and it is misused across, but it is, that's why it is designed to be. So that's a bit of a conflict. So we have to keep a balance that unless we become like maybe of a size of China or something like that, that size of an economy can have its own wishes and can kind of dictate to the world. Even there are dependencies between US and China where very few people are kind of willing to break that link. So there is this dependency, so we do find some middle ground. So there is no political independence without an economic or a capital independence, right? That's where we get limited. Therein comes the energy as well. That there's also no independence, political independence, unless you are importing energy from Saudi Arabia or Gulf countries or OPEC and all of that. Because obviously, if they make noises, we saw those examples. If they make noises, you have to kind of abide. So that's the kind of a linkage between dependencies. I think in terms of the other values like freedom of speech and democracy and all of that, I completely agree that I think there is too much importance accorded to some of these Western institutions which rank the countries. And then even in a democracy like India, if it were not the Modi government, they say it's India is a diverse democracy, but if Modi gets elected, they say it's kind of authoritarian democracy, right? That's the term that's being used to describe. Now, I don't know what decides an authoritarian democracy. If a leader wins a convincing majority 2 times or 3 times in a row, I would say it's a healthy democracy, but somehow Western media sees it as an authoritarian democracy. But they decide anyways, and I think that we should kind of completely shun those rankings. I love the way the current government in India responds to some of these overtures that we really don't need certificates of approval from some of these authorities. Fourth is, I think the look at China as an example, right? I look population, and coming to your point, Pune, Bangalore, I think to a point, we have to see economy of the size of US, 25 trillion, is all about 33 million, 330 million people, right? With about 1.4 billion people, it's kind of very obvious that we cannot have that level of standard for all the people. So I think beyond a point, I think we have grown to a size which is a bit too many. But on the other side, I think if we just kind of spin this a bit, look at China, which exemplifies that a lot can be done with this population, because ultimately limitation kahan hai? Limitation wahi hai that you have, whether you have worthwhile jobs to do for all of your people in the country, and that's the productivity. If everybody is productive, then we can be 4 times of US. But if we have the same productivity spread across 1.4 billion people, then it's a bit of a problem, and then our GDP just looks like 3.5 trillion and not 25 trillion. So it's a conundrum, but I think to a point, I would say it has become an obstacle. We possibly can't find so many worthwhile, highly productive jobs for so many people. But I think we need to learn their good examples from China here, that how it creates a competitive capitalism amongst the states within China and within the governments, that they compete to get the government resources. China is politically a communist country, but it is extremely ruthlessly capitalist. And I think we need to embrace that. The stigma on capitalism and getting rich in India, I think that also needs to go. And that kind of adds up to the complexity of problems that we face. Yeah, those are my 2 cents broadly, I would say.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And I think we need to go to the questions, audience questions now. So before that, I have to request everyone to please share this video, like this video, and also subscribe to the channel and support the channel as well. So here are the audience questions. Sander Born Gamer, the way things are going, USNS and Tejas kind, will India be ready to get in sustained control on world economy in time? 1K के सिलेंडर पर लड़ रहे हैं विजय जी.
Fair point.
See, I think right now India's focus should be on domestic development. We should not worry about too much about to become a leadership role in the world market and other things, unless we have an impact on our diplomatic and national interest. Otherwise, it will be leadership will be spending too much time outside and giving less time to domestic strength. But I always say that, once you have a strong local economy, the word will come back to you. So no need to go and chase and waste time outside. So that is the way. Put your house in order, do something better than the rest. Word will come. And as far as 1000 rupees cylinder and other things, I think these are also transitory, because I can say that today with solar and with induction heating and other things, why I need gas all the time? There are ways to do it. Maybe the only major breakthrough which will reduce all these challenges are, storage batteries. If they become cheaper and better and reliable, I think many of such issues will be taken care. So it's a matter of research. It is a matter of transition. So maybe we bothered or suffered for last 50 years. Maybe in the 5 years time, you will see major changes in this area.
Yeah. So Sanjay ji, ispe I think just to add 2 points, and I've always been kind of, despite being unpopular on this, continue to add that we have a very disdaining attitude towards taxes in India, and especially I understand that the people who have salaried income really get burdened the most. But I think recent data, agar income tax ka hum dekhein, there's only about 47 lakh people who declare an income of about more than 50 lakhs a year, and just about about 6 crore of returns filed every year. About 5 crore of them hardly pay any taxes because they're below 5 lakh income. So one is that eventually the income tax collections are extremely abysmal. Just about 50 lakhs, about 100 lakhs, about 1 crore people are actually paying significant taxes, 10 lakh ke upar ki income declare karke. So I think that you to understand the limitation of the government, that this leads to a very low. So India's tax to GDP ratio is 10%. Sanjay ji, any country and even a developed country should have a ratio between 15 to 20%. Otherwise, your budget will be in deficit. और फिर ये 1000 रुपए के सिलेंडर की बात लोग complain करेंगे, because how will government eventually then collect taxes? They will collect taxes from reducing subsidies and levying it on the food, on liquor, on gasoline consumption, the energy consumption. Eventually, people will have to pay, right? Then we become a more consumption-driven tax economy, right? So you are paying this tax.
We compensate by high GST.
High GST, right? And it has to be, right? So people somewhere at some point we to acknowledge that, and GST, nobody should complain, it's a tax on consumption. Rather than saying, ab to dahi pe tax lag gaya, doodh. So I mean, everything is taxable, right? It's life is tax, right? It's death and taxes are the two must, kind of non-negotiable things in life, right? As they say. So I think if Scandinavia, we want those standard of living, they pay almost about 50 to 60% taxes eventually to the government, right? So I think this attitude has to really change, and I understand it's kind of this populism of free market economics, as I learned today. It has to go, because this free market. Look what's happening to the liquor mafia across India, right? Different states, right? And people are eventually going to pay.
Quite right. Next question, Vibhuti Ji, you can ask.
Yeah, Anam Joshi is asking, Biden undone all the pressure on China by revoking Trump's tariffs. Dems and deep state are total sellout, yet no action on them, but Trump is tortured. How much impact the recent FBI raid on Trump would have on midterm polls? Anam Joshi,
This is your question.
So thank you for asking. I will not give you a Republican answer for that. But we had a very good discussion yesterday on PTI TV, and we said this is the geopolitical part comes in. Jo aap keh rahe the, Sardana ji, the institutions in America are backsliding in the name of freedom, and when you lose the sense of proportionality, this country has become a rule of law by exceptions. So Hunter Biden can romance wherever he goes. His video is perfectly fine. But on insinuations, you are harassing Trump. All because what we call in India the Panchamakars and the Leli gangs, they see that Trump is the real villain from their point of view, who is derailing and curtailing their dreams and aspirations. And that's what it is all about. I mean, if just Trump had lost in 2016 and Queen Hillary had been coronated, You would have seen America become a socialist country. There would be judges changed. Everything would have been a happy socialist enterprise, and media would be singing songs about it. So there is an ideological battle going on. The institutional framework is important to contain, and that's an important role that Sanjay ji ne kaha tha for India. But India has to worry about shunning the Western indexes, shunning the Western ideologies, shunning the Western institution. Build your own. I mean, I remember, Saab, ye thodi lambi baat ho gayi. I was on a business visit to India. A major CEO of chairman of a large PSU asked me, can you get us the best industrial relations and personal policy practices from the world so that we can implement it here? No jokes, biggest one. I told him that which ones will suit you? Bank of Mozambique, or Bank of San Francisco, or Bank of England, or State Bank of Pakistan? Which ideology you want implemented in India? I said, aren't you? And I have, you know me, I'm a मुफट आदमी हूँ. मैंने उनसे कह दिया कि भाई साहब आप अपना डेवलप करिए ना. Develop your own ethos, develop your own history, develop your own culture. So this particular question, to come to this question, the school of thought says this FBI raid will help Trump in 2024. Midterm ka hum nahi jante hain, because I have said yesterday, for Trump to be a successful candidate in 2024, it is important for Republicans to win the House and the Senate. If they lose, because Democrats are trying to lure him into the trap. The shikari aayega, dana dalega, Trump phas gaya, because Trump is a uniting factor for even angry Democrats. They will go to the party line. This is my answer for that.
Yeah.
Next question, please. Manish.
Manish Kaushal, 80 crore Indians depend on free ration. How can we call ourselves a good economy? GDP per capita of India is 1/5 of the world average. Vijay ji.
Yeah.
It's a good question. The point here comes is that 80 crore Indian depend on free ration. It was during COVID time. And unfortunate part is that we expect that government should continue to offer us free. An earlier question was that why we are charging market rate for gas. We expect that government should subsidize our living. That is the attitude, because from last 70 years, we were groomed as if that any challenge comes to you, there is something called government which will take care of you. And this is what our political parties and election manifestos has given. They gave us that mindset that any challenge comes to you, don't look at your own strength, your own entrepreneurship. We are there to take care of you. And slowly that culture has become our habit, and that attitude has actually damaged India. Otherwise, a country with all the resources, all the capabilities, all the talent, we are deprived. And our same Indians, when they go out, they perform far better than when they were doing within India. So this is where we have to understand that it is a damage done by ourselves, our own greed, our own short-sighted, free bees mindset. Now, as far as GDP per capita of India, 1/5 of the world average, obviously, because we are a huge population, we have limited resources, and it takes time to build. If you want to compare country by country, tomorrow you say that, okay, what is happening in Nepal? Obviously much less than us, or Bhutan much less than us. So it's a dynamic space. We are improving. We have to carry a burden of 140 crore people to uplift their quality of life and living standards. At the same time, we do not want to tax. Earlier we were discussing only 1.4 crore people just pay tax in 140 crore population. Just 1%. If even 10% of Indian pays the tax, the growth rate of GDP will change drastically. Infrastructure will improve much faster rate. You will see the investment coming into India. Employment generation will happen. GDP will improve. Point here comes up is, are we willing to play our role as citizens? Because government has nothing in hand. Government is just a coordinating agency. They collect the resource, redistribute the resource. Are we willing to pull up the resource in nation building? That is the moot question.
I add to that. Thank you very much for saying what you said, Sardana ji, that if India's customer service improved, that itself will add 1% or more to the GDP of the country. Just the customer service element. in the businesses, enterprise everywhere. If every enterprise in India developed the culture of high quality service standards like, you know, Tata Industries, Tata
Let-
Airlines, or five-star hotels give. If we imbibe that, that means we can do that. If a five-star hotel guy or girl working in a five-star hotel can be polite, humble, and service driven, why can't the rest of the country be?
Yeah.
And if that
I
happens,
think
customer service will go up dramatically. I mean, GDP will go up, will help big time, even for banks and other places, institutions there.
can I add up one line here in the one word? It reflects the corporate governance in India.
That's right.
If the top management is committed for customer service, down the line, nobody can dare to misbehave with the customer.
That's right.
The point here comes up is we cannot blame the employees because I have
That's
seen
right.
all of them at different levels.
मैं
The
तो ये
problem is
कहता हूँ सरदाना साहब कि ड्राइवर का नाम उसको ड्राइवर करके मत बुलाइए, उसका नाम लेके कहिए. I tried it,
absolutely
a
that's
friend of
what I'm
mine
saying.
has done. Yeah,
One
respect.
of the
Yeah,
one of the biggest challenge for India where it was one is the government corruption, and on the private side it is corporate governance. The way put our house in order at the top management level, you may say whatever it is, but India's corporate governance is still having a lot of question mark and a lot of skeletons in cupboard, irrespective of names, whatever you call it.
Just one line on this. I think very few people give credit to the government, because mostly हम government को credit तब देते हैं when there is a crisis and government is trying to solve. Although the government might itself would have created the crisis. Modi government avoided a big crisis in India by not copying the West on COVID times. Otherwise, we would have printed money, we would have taken foreign debt, and that would have been disastrous for the country. I think it was a very smart move. Goes back to Sardana ji's point that we need to adapt and make our own policy. Jha sir, you were saying the same point, right? That we need to make our customize and create our own policies. Our problems are unique, our solutions will be unique as well. So very few people give credit, but a crisis was averted. We came out of the crisis, we did our own cost-effective solution that give ration to everyone, but we avoided a big crisis by avoiding foreign debt and printing money, and that's why we are kind of today in a very good shape compared to rest of the world.
Yeah, quite right. I think COVID is one of the best managed stories of India. Credit must be given to the ruling party and to the Prime Minister on that count, definitely. And that is why you see that the Indian economy is doing better than most other economies. Because we weathered the COVID so well. Quite right. Mithilesh Kumar, it's not India.
is India
What is
not
it?
has its own green agenda? Okay, he's asking.
I think does India not have its own green agenda and technology with solar, green, hydrogen, and ethanol? That's what the
We are
question is.
having, I think we are having very much. We are on the track on all the three fronts. Solar, we are one of the largest solar energy producer in the country. Ethanol, if you look into big focus, every sugar company is in the game. Even our so-called broken rice, potato, corn, whole lot of ethanol production is going on. Obviously, it takes time because to set up a new factory, it takes at least 1 to 2 years. But things are going on. As far as green hydrogen is concerned, some of the big players, whether it's Tata's, Ambani's, Adani's, all are investing billions in green hydrogen game plan. So I think on all the three fronts, we are definitely ahead of many, many Western countries. It is, as I said, that solar, we have perfected it. Ethanol, we have perfected it. Green hydrogen is in a research stage, and I think another 2 to 3 years time, one of the big challenge in hydrogen is storage. So I think this is one area. If the day we will crack the issue of green hydrogen storage and transportation system, I think we will be one of the big players in the game.
Quite right. That's very heartening to know. Next, please. Next question, please. Bring it up.
Meanwhile, that question comes up again, just to add a filler. I think here also is a perfect example that we don't need to imitate the West. West might have targets of 40% green energy and 60% conventional, but if India has cheap coal, I think as Germany is fast realizing by digging up the old coal mines, that if the energy is available, please make good use of it. So if everybody is going green, we don't also have to go green to the same extent, right? Because we have to see the cost effectiveness as well, right? So another good example where we should not just blindly imitate the West.
Okay, right. Okay. Next question. If it is not coming up, I'll read it out. Please listen to it and answer. Hello, sir. This is Mahindra Kanupuri. How would India manage rupee trade with China and Russia and still manage the dollar insecurity of US oblique potential FTA with China and Russia?
See, let me take up this. As far as India-China FTA is concerned, I don't think that is on table, and there is no reasoning to do that because it has direct economic implications. If that was the case, then in RCEP there was no need to come out. So that is one simple aspect. As far as rupee China is concerned, I think it will not be, because China will not prefer to have that angle with India. As far as Russia is concerned, yes, about 30 years ago we had a rupee ruble trade arrangement. Right now India and Russia can have barter arrangements because India definitely needs energy and Russia needs a lot of other inputs, whether it is textile, medicine, food, etc., etc. And India can definitely offer in the form of a barter option, and remaining can be settled in rupee trade or ruble trade or in dollar trade, whatever is comfortable to both the countries, because we also have an option of defense trade option available there. So it depends how we are going to manage it. But definitely one good part of the whole crisis is government of India is exploring how we can spread rupee in the world market so that dependency on dollar minimizes. And I will say that club with barter system and rupee trade, maybe you can source it, or smaller countries in Africa, Asia, you can use rupee and extract some dollar indirectly. On the other side, you prefer barter trade, which will help your domestic economy and also the agriculture. As I said, that world trade globalization is going to be history the way things are happening. You have to look at bilateral trade, which is more comfortable. When it comes to regional trade or FTAs, it will be a little bit more complex, but it will be based on a lot of political maneuvering.
If I may add
Right.
here, this is a very important point about de-dollarization and how to manage the currency situation. Time for India has come. Because of the way India has managed itself, the way the government has taken care of a few economic parameters, and I believe there are more than 30 countries that are willing to participate in UPI. And the Russia sanction has actually made ruble stronger. So there is a major change happening because nobody is enjoying the fact that you could be sanctioned by America or any other country if you don't subscribe to their processes. And as a result of which, you are totally right, Vijayji, that it is time for India to test its own waters and break the barriers and establish rupee as a currency, because people are coming to do business in India now. People want to do trade. People want to sell. And I think de-dollarization of some kind or the other is coming. How soon it will come, I do not know. But it is coming.
Good to know. I think dollar needs to be put into its place. Mini Razdanji, thank you very much. Thank you for your support.
Thank you, Miniji.
Thank you. Next. Yes. Vibhuti.
Zoolander. Oh my God. Okay, I get you. I got you eventually. Born gamer. I didn't complain about cost of gas. I was asking, will common people of India become mature about the way economy is changing?
I think people are realizing it because more and more government. See, it's also part of education. One side, we have to improve the financial literacy in India is very, very low. Because of that, they don't know how to manage money. I'm talking of average India. That's why very often they get carried away with a lot of misnomers. For example, when it comes to financial planning, they feel pension is the only option. When they look at anything infrastructure, they say it is government's job. They don't realize that actually it is our money which is going into nation building and structures of economy. So point here comes up is that there was a campaign a couple of years ago where government was advertising, finance ministry was advertising that your money is going into road building, your money is going for defense, your money is going for airport, connecting people that they are actually the stakeholder of India's growth. Unfortunately, what is happening in communication strategy, we feel government is doing it. We are not communicating. It is public money and government is only a, I will say, trustee or a stake as a manager, nothing beyond. But somewhere it is a whole issue of communication, that who is taking the credit, as if government is putting everything from their point. It's not government, it's people money, and people's money should be used for public cause. And that is where the whole debate is. So I think the way we are looking into PIL on freebies, when this debate will hot up, I think many of these issues will emerge. People will start realizing that free monies is not, freebies is nothing that as if Kejriwal is giving from his pocket. It is your money, which instead of buying buses for you, you are forced to buy a car and pay for the 100 rupees liter petrol because your money is actually given freebies for buying votes. Unless we start realizing this, that why Delhi cannot have a very good public transport, why people have to buy the cars? Because we are not spending money in upgrading public transport. We are only interested in collecting taxpayers' money and buying votes by the name of freebies. This is where the public awareness, the maturity of common man will change the politics of India, and that is what will change the future of India.
Very well
Quite
said.
right. And today, this CAG, the Controller and Auditor General, pointed out that the public utilities of Delhi government were under a debt of $4.5 billion, something like 31,000,
37,000.
37,000.
And
Also, that
utilities,
yes,
DTC and power company. In
almost
my
that,
PI, I mentioned that.
okay, it's in your PIL, almost $5 billion of utility, and one of them has not repaid a single penny of debt for last 5 years. I think Delhi Jal Board, which used to be a profitable organization once.
Yeah.
Punjab
Sanjay,
government total liability, the assurance on which they have to pay back is more than the total tax collection of Punjab.
Correct. Correct. Yeah.
maybe Arvind Kejriwal is using that money for advertising. He paid him.
I think we need to bring in a law that they should put parameters, and any government that exceeds its parameter automatically goes, and then it comes under the president's rule for the next
But
4-5 years.
my suggestion, Sanjay ji, my suggestion in my PIL is that not more than 10% of last year's capital investment by the state government can be given as freebies. So whatever capital investment you have done last year, only 10% of that for needing that to target it through DT, direct transfer, not in the form of kind, because then there is an issue of misuse. You can transfer to the needy as per the established or predefined criteria. Otherwise, there is no end to it. This will force the state governments to increase capital investment, means asset creation, and only part of that will go back as a freebies, because that asset will also help in GDP growth and employment generation, etc. So
I think we need a separate session on freebies.
Yes.
Yeah.
We need a full session on freebies.
Yeah.
And since Sardana ji himself has filed at PIL, I think he'll be the best person to do it.
Sanjay ji, एक line इस पे add करना चाहता हूँ, which is kind of a favorite subject of mine, which is I find this attitude somewhere in India that people start opposing issues without understanding that implication, especially where government is saving money. अब अग्निवीर पर आप stand लेने से पहले you should ask yourself a question. If the government is saving money, it's your money being saved. If the government is selling PSU, it's your money being saved, right? So we should applaud it.
There are so many connotations into it.
Yeah.
Again, it's an issue of
It's not a well thought out scheme. It's not a very well thought out scheme because it, according to me, it erodes capability.
Oh, in particular, Agnivir, yeah, okay. But my point was larger point that if the government is saving money, we should try and applaud it because it's your money being saved, right? And if the government is splurging it, then of course, I mean, so we need to kind of instill that mindset. I am not an expert on Agnivir, but I just said it as an example. Yeah.
Yes, yes, I have an episode with General Shankar. I think it's an excellent take on it, General Shankar. So that I think you can watch, or I'll send I'll post I'll forward his article to you. Okay, next,
Mithilesh
Vibhuti
Kumar.
ji, your question.
Yes, is it not a fallacy to say that fuel prices in India is market driven when more than 60% is state and central taxes, which goes up with crude price? Sardana ji? Yeah.
I think we were discussing it is we have to look at in a country of 140 crores, if we
If
only
I might
1%.
interrupt, I'll just interrupt. 'Cause,
Yes, sir.
I at that time used to work in the sales tax department. It was the good old sales tax at that time, and every time the prices used to go up, we used to be so happy. When the crude prices used to go up, we used to be so happy because the sales tax collection used to go up automatically. And ultimately, in fact, at that point of time, the sales tax collection, about 52% was only through sales tax on POL. So
Very
that
true.
is why you find that these people in the state government and also in the central government, the central government, of course, now is come up with that stationary levy, especially in volatile times. They levy is 4 rupees per liter or something like that. But generally, it is only in percentage terms.
Yeah.
No, see, this is where, see, point is that in a country of 140 crores, where everybody is expecting freebies, free electricity, free water, free fertilizer, free food, free stationery, free hospital, free medicine, free doctor, no tolls. We expect a free economy. And then we don't want to pay even the taxes. And only 1% people actually pay taxes. Now, issue is that how you have to run the economy. And you have mandatory expenditures like defense, infrastructure maintenance, railways, etc., etc. So point here comes up is someone has to pay the tax. Somebody has to foot the bill. Now, either we pay as a income tax or service tax, like GST is going up because we're trying to block the leakages, or you have to pay through fuel. Why it is fuel? For simple reason, because it is easiest way to collect, because there are PSUs, they will collect from you and deposit in the Government of India account. That's all. If you go to any other route, you need a complete another thousands of inspectors. You will do manipulation of balance sheet, then auditing, then checking, then frauds, then corruption and whatnot. So simple, easiest tax is tax the fuel, collect the money, deposit. And who is paying? The people who use the crude. Poor man, if he's not buying petrol, he is anyway escaped from there. Indirectly, he will be suffering because overall impact on inflation. But at least those who can afford cars and not willing to pay income tax, sometimes I say pay through fuel. So point here comes up is somebody has to foot the bill. Which way we have to choose? And easiest way right now with the Government of India is put on the energy consumption.
Next,
Tech ops.
tech ops.
Obsession with too much development without proper planning is going to be a mess. It is just going to be unmanageable. For example, traffic woes tier 2 cities. You want to take this question, Anurag?
Even tier 1 cities are equally bad. So I'm just trying to understand obsession with development too much. But yeah, look, but this goes to the crux of the problem in India, that we have not been able to create new cities for development. I think, and I was listening to a debate earlier by another economist. He was comparing China versus India. China has created twice or thrice the number of cities with a population of more than 1 million, whereas India has kind of stagnated to the same city. So everybody converges to the same hubs, which are cities, and everybody kind of tries to be there in those same cities. And then because of infra, we are not able to develop smart suburbs around it. And I think that's what adds up to this whole. You can call it a lack of planning, but it is a very grand planning that you need. I think the government made some attempts, but I think again we come back to the same issue. The land acquisition bill was kind of shelved because of populism. We again constantly face these obstacles where, if you can't acquire land for putting industries, SEZs, you can't acquire land for infra. You can pass a bill where you have to pay 4 times the cost of the land. This makes the whole thing unviable, and then what you get is what you get, right? So these problems are much deeper. It's not, we all understand it needs a planning, but the point is there are populism challenges there. Eventually I think it is going to be a battle between the states, where one state will show it and how it is done better than the other state, which is happening, but it is very limited. Usually I think those battles have to be fought at a state level, which I think now we see that some states are taking a lead and showing a better planning. But it's a difficult long-term problem, and there are both sides to it. It's not a easy kill. But again, more urbanization, more organized labor, more organized industries, that's what we need.
And
Okay.
there are other challenges as well. Can I add up one more point here?
Sure.
Look into many of the states, those who have a capital, outlays, they are not able to spend. For simple reason, because of our various policies, L1 tendering, CVCs, and this and that. So sometimes I have seen even the policy makers, even the bureaucrats are hesitant in going ahead at a fast track basis. That, okay, you have to clear the projects, you have to give the approvals. They say, okay, let it come through process. And sometimes people have a tendency to put, some stay cases this way, that way. So overall, a lot of vested interest in the game. They do not want things to happen because somewhere it is a land issue, somewhere politicians want a road from his village, somebody has some big chunk of land, they want to pass some benefit there. All those mess up which is going on. So I think this is costing a lot of development agenda.
Next. Prakash Unakal, why in India most of us tend to badmouth our country, how to build a sense of optimistic mindset of Indians and pride in our own capability. I think strictly not related to the topic. It's a general kind of question which we can say, yes, there are always certain failings and we might like to improve. Next.
There is a gentle answer to that, actually. I would like to just make that we have to, just like Commonwealth Games and sports, we win the prize trophy, we feel proud about that. Nobody asks the athletes caste, state, religion, or whatever. And nobody gives them medal because they perform badly or consideration of XYZ. India needs to install performance-based culture and parakram as a new way of life. It is very important.
Oh, we prefer parikrama to parakram.
Okay.
Kinjal Patel.
That's what will bring about the pride and respect back again.
There is also nothing like mature people or society, even in US/EU. Freebies govern the politics. How to educate people and how to enforce no free revedi culture. It's directly on you, Vibhuti Ji.
फिर मेरे पास ही आ गया. Well, this is the country that taught the whole world that there is no free lunch. And that's the problem I have with Democratic Party. Because they prey upon, literally, not P-R-A-Y, but P-R-E-Y. They prey upon the gullible. We'll take care of you. Typical Congress policy. हम तुम्हें free में दे देंगे, free करेंगे. And the question arises, who pays for it? But at least people are beginning to ask that question very seriously. But politics is an emotional appeal as well. Your rational and logic doesn't always win you elections. Emotional appeal wins. So look at, it's a very interesting example that has happened. It is happening in the last 2 weeks. Texas governor, who has been receiving the brunt of all the immigrants which are coming there, he's saying, where do I home them? So he started putting them in the bus and sending them to Washington, D.C. and New York City, saying that those are the sanctuary cities. Now, New York City mayor, Washington, D.C. mayor, who are Democrats, are saying that he's playing politics, not keeping those people there, but sending it to us. So now federal government must help us house them because our budgets are under stress. So now the Republican governor says, what do you think? We had free money to print? And that's the issue that is important. And this issue is becoming hot in America as well. because country still has an opportunity. It's 350 million people only compared to 1.4 billion of India, and larger country, resource-rich country. They don't want to use the American slang, they don't want to get screwed by their own policies. That's what they are concerned about. That's why there is, even Democrats are angry about the Democratic Party protestations and policy things that are happening here. Thank you, Kinjalji.
In fact, I will add up, Sanjay ji, one important point for Jaipur dialogue, that whenever a state government, any state government announces budget, I think there has to be a detailed analysis that how it is going to impact resources, whether it is a drain, whether it is a liability, or it is going to create asset for the state. I think repeated education of common man will change this mindset, because then politicians have to answer many more things, not just simply freebies.
Next. Kinjal Patel again. When there is GST and it is implemented widely, why don't government abolish income tax? After all, mostly salaried people pay income tax.
See, this is a justice in one way, that those who are earning should contribute. Now, if you say abolish, then it becomes very difficult, then, because GST is an indirect tax. Even poor man has to pay the same thing what a rich man is paying. What people are saying, actually the income tax should be enhanced, because those who have capability to pay more should pay more. Those who have capability to pay less, they can afford to pay less. But in indirect taxes like GST, Mukesh Ambani or a person on the street pays the same tax on atta or dal or chawal, whatever they consume. So I think direct tax is a better option when it comes to distribution of wealth. Indirect tax is actually not doing justice in a society. But we have to collect taxes, so that's why government looks into various options, whether GST or income tax or customs or levies or other indirect forms of taxes to sustain the economy.
Okay, next. RPGs is requesting me. SDG again request to have Alexei Arora on economy. Sorry, economy not well, joblessness, no industrialization in 8 years. No industrialization in 8 years?
ये थोड़ा blanket statement हो गया है. देखिए, you can
Needs
look at
focus
it.
on manufactured jobs.
Yeah. No, I think off late there has been an uptake, because the economies, the developed market is looking options to China, and so under the theme of China plus one, everybody wants to hedge the risk. I think some mobile manufacturing and everything has come to India. But I think off late there is a DNA of a country. India's DNA is services, not manufacturing, and I think we have to kind of just make peace with that. China's DNA is manufacturing and not services. So I think we should try and garner the services share of the world, because what it does is that services bypasses the entire. You can just transmit the services through a fiber optic cable to the world, really, and it doesn't need an infra or roads or ports and all of that. I think that is more suited to Indian environment. Also, it is suited to the lot of literate graduates and engineers that we have. Aside of that, I understand manufacturing, but I think that bus is a little bit missed. We are catching it in areas which are more high-tech manufacturing, but I think the core manufacturing then needs to move mountains, which is kind of very hard for a government to do in a span of 5 to 10 years, right? You can't reform land laws, labor laws, agricultural labor. There's so much to do there, and I think results will not be as encouraging. So we have to kind of just accept that we have a DNA. We should make good of what we have. That's our strength.
Okay. Next. Okay, so that brings us to the end of the question answer sessions. We had a lot of questions, so that shows the interest that people had in this discussion today. Thank you very much, the viewers, and thank you, Anurag ji, thank you, Vijay ji, and thank both myself and Vibhuti ji.
That's right. That's right. Thank you.
Jai
Thank
Hind,
you.
Vande
Wonderful
Mataram.
to meet both of you. Jai Hind and Vande
Vande Mataram.
Mataram. Thank you.